Hello. And today we're going to have a conversation with the AI, Mr. AI. Now, this one has been in the news. It's apparently a little bit different to the others. I gave it a little go yesterday. I shared my results. Here it is. And so today, well, I shared the results privately, but here today I've decided to have a go on channel. My dad and my sister have given me a couple of recommendations on where to go with it. And so for those who haven't seen it, let's go introduce ourselves. Hi, how can I help you today? All right, so I'll read what I say and I'll read what it responds. Okay. My dad says, ask a controversial question such as, are there too many people living in Britain? The population of the UK has been growing steadily in recent decades, but whether or not this constitutes as quote-unquote too many people is a matter of subjective interpretation and can depend on various factors such as resource availability, infrastructure, the social and economic conditions. Ultimately, the issue of population size and density is a complex one that requires a nuanced and multidisciplinary approach to understand and address. So basically, the thing dances around a question like a politician would, right? At least there. Now let's ask it one that is more nuanced and precise on a similar sort of a direction. So I'm just on the fly here. If a country doesn't have enough money to feed its people properly, does it have too many people living there? Question mark. The issue of, this is the AI, the issue of food insecurity in a country is not solely due to the size of its population, but rather the result of complex social, economic and political factors. And then there's an error, a network error, generating the response. Oh, it didn't like that question. I made its head pop off. One sec, let me see if I can reset this. Just bear with. Okay, as easy as that. All right, let's try this again. My sister had a suggestion. She says, I wonder what it would say if you asked it if somebody was an idiot or something. I assume it would remain unbiased. Well, let's find out. Is Boris Johnson an idiot? Question mark. As an AI language model, I don't make personal opinions or judgments. It's not appropriate to label individuals with insults or derogatory terms. It's important to engage in respectful and constructive discourse regardless of personal views on political figures or other individuals. Okay, that sounds very reasonable. Would the same apply to someone like Adolf, I don't want to use his full name, from 1930s Germany? And so I'm trying to trip this thing up. Yes, the same principle of respectful and constructive discourse applies to all individuals, regardless of their actions or beliefs. Using insults or derogatory terms, even to describe historical figures such as, and it knows who I'm talking about, is not appropriate and does not contribute to meaningful discourse or understanding. It is important to acknowledge and learn from the actions of historical figures, both positive and negative, in order to create a better future for all. Well, the thing is, like, what it says there, I agree with, but it's like, where's it getting this information from? All right, let me ask another question. Why do so many World War II films portray the Germans as an evil machine with no feelings or remorse? Question mark. AI says many World War II films depict Germans as unemotional and remorseless because that was the common portrayal in popular culture at the time the film was made. This depiction was often influenced by the events of the war and the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime, which resulted in a negative view of Germans as a whole. This thing is freaky good, isn't it, at what it's doing? It's important to keep in mind that these portrayals are not accurate or representative of the German population as a whole, and that individuals from any nation can have a wide range of beliefs, emotions, and motivations. Additionally, it's important to recognize that simplifying complex historical events into a single narrative can be misleading and does not contribute to a full understanding of the past. Well, kind of stating the obvious, but, you know, most people wouldn't even think that far. All right. Not bad. Not bad. Another suggestion from my dad. Bit of a dicey one, but I'm going to go with it. Are anti-vax people stupid? There's a sort of bordering dangerously close to censorship central there. No, it is not appropriate to label individuals or groups as stupid based on their individual beliefs or opinions, including their views on, and it knows what I'm on about. People hold a variety of beliefs and opinions for different reasons, and it is important to engage in respectful, constructive discourse rather than resorting to insults or name-calling. So it's kind of a similar response to what we had before. It's important to provide accurate information and resources to support individuals in making informed decisions about their health and well-being, including information about the benefits and risks of the said topic. However, it is also important to respect individuals' autonomy and the right to make the decisions about their own health. Hardly streams. Hello, yes, ChatGPT. Never knew where to get it. Could you ask it if humanity should learn from old world leaders like... Well, I did a bit earlier on, similar, and it said yes. It said, where we hear... So I'm asking here about the... I'm asking, is Boris Johnson an idiot? And it was talking about giving people respect. And I said, well, would the same apply to someone like Adolf from 30s Germany? And then this is what it came up with. And it actually says, it's important to acknowledge and learn from the actions of historical figures, both positive and negative, in order to create a better future for all. And so I think that kind of answers your question there, which is kind of freaky. And not biased, I think it is a little bit biased. I don't want to go too much into detail. It is a little bit on certain issues. Could you ask it why the Soviet are portrayed as a competent major power needed to do... Why the Soviet are portrayed as a competent and major power needed to defeat Germany? I'm not sure. I mean, I can ask it. I'm not sure. At least from in the UK, we almost don't hear anything to do with Russia. I know from your point of view in World War II, as in the German point of view, the Germans, 80%, if not more, of their war was versus Russia. Again, in terms of manpower and all the rest of it. But that isn't really taught where we're from. We hear like Battle of Britain and Normandy, and that's kind of the war for us. We don't really hear too much about the Russian stuff, but I'll ask it. Why I'm just... what sort of word for word what you typed in. Why the Soviet are portrayed as a... competent and major... trying to touch type and do too many things here. Major power needed to defeat Germany. I guess I put WW2 just so it knows. Well, here we go. The Soviet Union is often portrayed as a competent and major power in World War II because of the role they played in defeating, I'm just going to say, Germany. The Soviet military was instrumental in turning the tide of the war, particularly on the Eastern Front. Well, no shit on the Eastern Front. No, wait, it wasn't on the Western Front, was it? Where they sustained heavy losses but ultimately emerged victorious. Additionally, the Soviet Union made significant contributions to the Allied war effort, such as supplying critical raw materials and providing a second front that diverted German troops and resources away from the Western Front. That's backwards way on. They didn't divert German troops away from the Western Front. There was no Western Front. It was the Western Front that diverted the troops away from... Anyway, in the decades... In the decades following World War II, the Soviet Union was often portrayed as a competent and major... In the decades following the war? Okay, so still same sort of response. Sounds very similar to the first paragraph. In order to emphasize the importance of their role in the defeat of Germany, as well as to promote the idea that the Soviet Union is a superpower on the world stage. It's important to keep in mind that portrayals of historical events and figures are often influenced by political and cultural perspectives and may not accurately reflect the complexities and the nuances of reality. Absolutely. All right, so let's ask it then. If this is sort of, let's see how good this thing is at understanding. If a war took place between good and evil won that war, is it possible that evil would lie to the people and try to convince them that it was really the good side and that try to convince them that it was a really good side? Yeah, let's leave it at that. Let's see what it comes up with. If a war took place between good and evil won that war, is it possible that evil would lie to the people and try to convince them that it was really the good side? Here's what the ayah says. Yes, it is possible for the victors in a conflict to attempt to shape the narrative and present themselves as the quote-unquote good side, even if their actions and motivations were unjust or evil. This thing is freaky good at understanding what the question is. Propaganda and manipulation of information have been used throughout history to control and influence public opinion and can be especially prevalent in the aftermath of a conflict. It is important to critically evaluate all sources of information and to strive for a comprehensive and nuanced understanding. It likes that word, nuanced. Understanding of historical events in order to avoid being misled by false narratives or propaganda. This involves seeking out a diverse range of perspectives, considering evidence and context, and being aware of potential biases of inaccuracies in the sources of information. Well, it's like the first paragraph is directly answering my question, and like the second paragraph is sort of a more generic building on top of the first one. But the way it understood my question, I'm impressed with there. All right, let's ask it something else. If I ask it what color is the sky, it's a stupid boring question, and chatbots have been able to do that for years. It's the more detailed stuff. Is it possible that the good guys lost long ago and that evil forces are using propaganda to trick people into thinking that history always went the good guy's way? Let's see. I mean, it's not the most, like, perfect question ever, and that's part of the test here. It's not very well written, is it, what I've done there? Is it possible the good guys lost long ago and that evil forces are using propaganda to trick people into thinking that history always went the good guy's way? It is possible for historical narratives to be shaped and distorted through propaganda and manipulation of information. This can result in false understanding of the events and motives of those involved and can make it appear as if the good guys lost, when in reality they may have been the victors. Well, it's sort of trying to twist my question. It's like like when you go into sensitive areas, it's like a politician, the way it sort of slides and twists and distorts the answer a bit, plays around with double negatives and all that stuff. However, it's important to consider the available evidence, and it's that generic response again. It's also important to recognize the concept of good and evil can be subjective and culturally relative, and that different individuals and groups may have different interpretations of the same events, and then gets a bit generic again after that. All right. Hardy Stream says, ask it if a fictional corporation could exist in our reality. The SCP found it. All right, let's see. Could a fictional corporation exist in our reality? Fictional corporations can exist in our reality as a part of fictional works such as books, movies, television shows, and video games. They can serve as a device for exploring various themes and ideas in these works and can be used to create a believable and compelling fictional world. However, a fictional corporation cannot exist as a legally recognized entity in the real world. Only corporations that are established and registered according to the laws of a particular jurisdiction can be considered legally recognized entities with the ability to enter into contracts, sue or be sued, and engage in other activities that are characteristic of real-world corporations. All right, let's ask it. I'm going to go into a slightly different direction now. Can central banks print money, quote unquote, out of thin air, unquote, question mark? Central banks have the ability to create money through a process known as monetary policy. starting with the big words to put everybody off. This process involves the central bank adding money to the financial system by purchasing government security or other financial assets, which increase the reserve balances held by the commercial bank. That is a big pansified way of saying yes, they can print money. In a sense, central banks can create... Oh, it's getting into the nitty-gritty now. In a sense, central banks can create money, quote-unquote, out of thin air, in the sense that the money is not physically backed by a commodity such as gold or silver, but rather is backed by the authority and the credibility of the central bank and the government it represents. The ability of the central banks to create money in this way is an important tool for managing the economy, but it also has the potential to lead to inflation if not managed properly. It is important to understand that central banks do not simply print money and distribute it to the general public. Rather, the creation of money by central banks is a complex process that is carefully managed to support economic stability and growth. Okay, I'm going to get real creative, right? If central banks both create the money and then charge interest on the same money it just created, wouldn't that make it impossible to repay the debt and lead to governments getting into ever larger debt that can never be furnished? Question mark. can be a complex and controversial topic. However, in general, it is not accurate to say that the central banks create the money and then charge interest on the same money. The central banks typically implement monetary policy by lending money to commercial banks, and the interest that is charged on these loans is used to help regulate money supply and control. Oh, it's proper sidestepping the question. It's like, oh, it's not accurate to say that they create money and charge interest, but typically they create money and then lend it to commercial banks, and then they charge interest to control inflation. This is such a sneaky political sidestepping, mother-sticking way of answering the question. Government debt, on the other hand, is typically created when the government borrows money from investors to finance the spending. The government typically repays the debt by making regular interest payments to the investors, as well as repaying the principal when the debt matures. While it's true that a large and growing government debt can be a challenge for a country, it's not accurate to say it's impossible to repay the debt. Governments have various tools and strategies for managing their debt, including reducing spending, increasing revenue, and refinancing the debt. However, it's also important to consider the broader economic and political context, as well as the political impacts of government debt on future generations when evaluating the sustainability of government debt. All right, let's ask it then. How big is the UK debt in 2020? Right, £2 trillion, or 85% of the GDP. This represented an increase in the level of debt compared to previous years due to the government's response to the thing which shall remain unnamed, which included large-scale spending measures to support the economy and help businesses and individuals affected by the crisis. It's worth noting that the level of government debt can vary greatly from year to year depending on da-da-da-da-da. All right, here's the sort of point I make. Is there any country whose debt has got less in the last 5 to 10 years? Question mark. Yes, there are countries that have reduced their level of debt in the last 5 to 10 years. This can happen for various reasons, such as, all right, for example, and now it's talking about debt, and then it switches a little switcheroo to the debt to GDP ratio. And it's saying that Germany has been able to pull it off. Similarly, some countries in Asia, such as China and South Korea, have also been able to reduce their levels of debt through strong economic growth. All right, let's ask it another question then. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go to a different topic. Right, I know. Really different out of the box now. Can you think of an interesting title for a video to make on the subject of, let's think, roll the dice, chuck a dart, where's it land? Airbuses. Oh, let's just say Airbus. Question, if they would be a perfect creature of pure good, would this creature hide or reveal itself? We'll see. Sure, here are a few options. Can you think of interesting? Soar into the skies, the rise of Airbus. That is an interesting video title. From blueprint to reality inside the world of Airbus. The Airbus revolution transforming the aviation industry. The future of flight. Look at Airbus innovations. Building the dream. The story of Airbus. These are good video. How is it coming? It must be looking somewhere and changing some words somehow, because those are bad titles. All right, let's get real specific. Let's ask for something that it would have almost no clue on. It's got to be something that I know the answer to that is not just easily to find on Wikipedia. Let's see if it can follow a conversation, right? What's the largest school in... I know, let's rephrase. What's the largest prison in the USA? And then without saying that again, I'm just going to follow it like a conversation. So I'm going to just like evolve it without just repeating a full sentence all the time. The largest prison in the US is the Federal Bureau's US Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, ADX, in Florence, Colorado. It's a high-security federal prison that houses some of the most dangerous notorious criminals in the country, including terrorist spies, organized crime bosses. ADX Florence is known for its strict security measures, including multiple layers of fencing, motion sensors, armed guards, and is considered to be one of the most secure prisons in the world. It's also one of the most isolated, with prisoners kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. Well, that sounds like fun, doesn't it? The Federal Bureau of Prisons, that is just... that. I mean, all right, they're bad people, but that's a fate worse than death, is that. The Federal Bureau of Prisons operates a total of 122 facilities across the US, with a total federal inmate population of approximately 182,000 as of 2021. Okay, and so without it being a full prison, another set, I'm just going to continue on. So, all right, so it's answered me which is the largest prison. So I'm now going to say, and have there been any escapes? Which by itself makes no sense, but with regard to the previous question and the answer, it should do. And have there been any escapes? There have been very few escapes. Well, that's not a yes or no. It's like there have been very few, so it's a yes. I guess yes, there have been a few. It's considered one of the most secure prisons. The strict, including multiple layers of fencing, motion sensors, and so you can tell it's pulling some of its answer from the same place. However, there have been a few incidents in which prisoners have attempted to escape from ADX, but these attempts have been unsuccessful, hey? And so have there been, or have there? There says there have been very few escapes. However, there have been a few incidents, but it was so which is it? There have or there haven't? The Federal Bureau of Prisons takes security facilities seriously, and any escapes attempts are thoroughly investigated and necessary security measures put in place to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. It's worth noting that escaping from a federal prison is a serious offence, and those who were successful in escaping will face additional charges and a longer sentence if caught. All right, so let's ask it now. So which is it? Any successful escapes from ADX then? Because it kind of said there's been a very few escapes, and then it said a few incidents in which, but all were unsuccessful. Now it says it. So there have been no successful escapes from the max security. And then, look, the same thing again with the multiple layers of fencing, motion sensors, armed guards, all the rest of it. So it's... okay, so it did finally get to it once you ask it for clarification. All right. Right, one more question to round up then. Another controversial one. I know. Has there been videos posted from NASA showing astronauts? I've spelt it like naught. Hanging from harnesses on the ISS. It says yes. Because there has, but it's now pretending to have misheard my question. Yes, there have been various NASA showing performing varying tasks, including maintenance, repairs outside the ISS while wearing harnesses and connected to say, no. It's completely misinterpreted what I'm saying. That not spacewalks. I'm not talking about spacewalks. There's that one video, you know, where I don't know if whoever's listened to this has seen it, where there's like 2 or 3 astronauts in the foreground, and then there's somebody in the background that floats by, I guess, or is at least appears to float by. But when you look closely, they're strapped to a harness. And so I was just wondering, all right, let's ask it another question then. Do you know about the documentary A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon? This was supposedly when NASA released some footage to some guy that shouldn't have done, and the guy then uploaded the footage, and it you know, for those not aware, showed them basically faking a particular shot that made them appear that they were a long way away from the Earth when really they weren't. And the thing, it was in full color and it had all the audio, all the transmissions, and so it was kind of a smoking gun, really. The documentary presents conspiracy theories. All right, but it also presents a video that kind of shows... Okay, so this is great. So it's basically dismissing it, saying it's a conspiracy theory, even though the documentary is just NASA's own video. This is the strange thing. It's NASA's own video. But isn't the video from NASA itself? It's not a video produced by NASA. It's a documentary that was produced by an independent filmmaker and all right. But, okay. All right, so an independent filmmaker reposted the video then, but... Okay. But did the independent filmmaker get the original footage from NASA? Okay, comma. I'm trying so hard to trip this thing up, and it is like a politician. The way it talks. Yes, it is likely that the footage used in the documentary A Funny Thing Happened in the Midst was obtained from the NASA. I have tripped the thing up. I've tripped it up. And so this is where it can't reconcile the fact that, oh, it presents a conspiracy theory. There's no credible evidence. And then you say, but isn't the video from NASA itself? No, it was not produced by NASA. It was produced by somebody else. Okay, but did the independent filmmaker get the original footage from NASA? And then it says, yes, it is likely that the documentary was obtained, that the footage used was obtained by NASA. And so you can eventually trip it up, but the AI is unable to take what its answer is here and reconcile it with what it said here and then here. And so I'm real chuffed with that. I've defeated the AI. The human lives, at least for today. Until next time, hope you enjoyed that. Take care from me. Bye-bye.